So this is the Rike knife Tissot, or Tissot, depending on how you want to pronounce it and where you come from. This may change, but regardless, this is the newest knife from Rike, and it has one very interesting party trick that we will talk about shortly. So, Rike have made the Tissot, and now the real question is, what is it doing and why is it costing $365 to $390 and some change? Well, obviously there's the build quality and the refinement process with an M390 blade and the titanium handle, and the two variations of handles, with being the gray and the black clamshell is what I believe they call it. And then you obviously have the little liner lock on the inside here, really smooth action. All very nice stuff. But for $309, that is quite a hefty asking price. Well, I guess I won't be around the bush too much. This knife has one very interesting party trick that when you push the button, everything can get a little bit funky and opens up some very interesting possibilities for what Rike could be doing with this knife in the future. So by disengaging the slider here, obviously you can now take the clamshell off and you can create some very interesting opportunities for either Rike to officially or for some other individuals to unofficially create and modify whatever they want to in this framework. It reminds me a little bit of what Pyrotech is doing with their magnetic scales, though that's a little bit different philosophy. So now Rike have an interchangeable clamshell style knife scale setup, I guess you would call it. And I don't know, that's just a really interesting, cool feature that I don't see a whole lot of, and I appreciate the smoothness by which this system can operate. As you just slide it back on, slide it down, and then lock it in place, and you're set to go. So the clamshells are interchangeable, very cool. But how is this knife to use? Well, obviously the action is extremely smooth. The feeling of the knife is good. I don't quite know how I feel about this little gap right here. I want to put my finger inside of it, but that's a rather uncomfortable position. But if I put my finger down here in little wells that they've created and put my thumb across, I have a really good grip using the knife. The scales themselves are really comfortable to use and to hold. The little kind of grooving that they've done in here isn't the most comfortable thing for my hand size and hand shape, but I can see someone with different or bigger sized hands could appreciate it quite nicely. The pod clip itself is non-ambidextrous, so sorry left-handed friends, but at the same time with the scales, I'm curious to see if you can create an ambidextrous version of this. And then as far as the actual action goes, well, obviously it's smooth, and the way that they've hidden the little liner lock on the inside here for moving and unmoving it, I would say is quite comfy. And I mean, obviously it's a handsome knife, if not a bit understated. It has a little bit of the Rike lamella energy to it. Also want to give a little shout out to Rike and the designer for putting the name right there on the pod clip so you can see who made it, when it was made, helps to date these sorts of things. And I want to commend the designers for making a knife that does feel this good, and it feels a little bit unique and is offering something a little bit different to the market itself. Also, rotating this knife in the hand is super comfy. Just the way that this roll happens and the little beveling, it just feels really smooth and refined. But then again, for $390, I would expect and hope for nothing less. When it comes to opening and closing this knife, how does it feel? Well, using your thumb feels okay. It feels fine. The angle feels good enough, and I appreciate the way that they've given you kind of two angles, this little groove in here to use your thumb on it. It honestly feels like it's designed mostly for a reverse flick. And what's been interesting is that as I use the knife, it gets easier and easier. No surprise there, like Chris Reeve over detents the knives there so that you can get it used into and it can get smoother as you go. And this knife feels quite the same. Obviously with a knife of this expense and with these materials, you'd hope for the action to be really smooth. And it feels that. It's not overly crisp. It's not something like let's say a Diva Pony, for example, but at the same time, for a knife of this size, that's about what, 8 inches and some change overall length, it is smooth. When it comes to something like the weight that's required to open it, 1, 2, ooh, yeah, 1, 2, 1, 2, there you go. Yeah, so about 2 pounds of force is required in that process. And then for the thumb, depending on how you want to open it, it's probably easier for the reverse flick for that snappy finish, but for something that's solid and you want to have a more gradual opening process, obviously that's right there, and those grooves are nice and comfy for you to use your hands. And just, I assume for a lot of different hand sizes, your mileage may vary, but let me know if you get your hands on these, how it feels to use and to open and to, well, close. But you've seen me open this knife, you've seen me close this knife, and as a more audio focus side of things, well, this knife isn't overly loud, it's not audacious, it's not big in its movements. It is very quiet, it's very refined. It's probably the best way to put it. The, let's say the lamella has a bit more of a sharp punch to it, whereas this knife is very smooth and is almost like somebody applied a little audio dampener or a denoiser to the process of the opening and closing. But that's that. For the future of this knife, I would love to see Rike get a little bit crazier with these clamshell scales here on the backing. I'd love for other individuals to make their own variations of it and seeing how creatively people can go about getting a knife into that pyrotech insanity where things can get a little bit off the rails. Like, I think a knife like this would really benefit from some more colors and some more variation, which Rike could very well have in mind, but we'll see how that goes in the future. But let me know what you think of this knife in the comments down below. Pop into the Discord. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.